Hi, I'm Heyzeus, and this video is about 6 interesting skins with patterns you might have missed. Sponsored by Earn a Skin, the site where you can, well, earn a skin. I'll talk more about them later, but for now, I want to get things underway. So, our first pattern is a pattern that shows up on the Glock High Beam and the Sawed Off Brake Light. I'm going to lump these two in together because it's essentially the same pattern. Now, the underlying texture file is this. The weapon description calls this a spiral pattern, and essentially the green parts show up as white lines on the gun. And this means that both skins can go from having almost no patterns on them to being almost entirely covered by patterns. Now, in the case of the Glock, I have a definite preference for it having an entire spiral on it. I'm not sure if you'll agree with me or not, but I think it looks best like this. This one here is pattern 897 if you're interested, and I have a similar view of the brake light. I kind of think the more stripes the better, although I can see why someone might have the opposite view. Either way though, these skins are really common and you can get pretty much whichever pattern you want at market price. So the second skin is the Crimson Tsunami, a restricted Galil from the Spectrum case. Now, the Crimson Tsunami is a really underrated skin in my opinion. It's obviously not that colourful, tan isn't really the flashiest colour, but I think it's classy. And what you might not have noticed is that it's got a pattern as well. So this is the underlying texture file. As you can see, it's a bunch of waves, and as some people are probably guessing at this point, it's based on the Great Wave of Kanagawa, a famous 1800s woodblock painting from Japan. The artist confirms this on her workshop page, by the way, so it's not speculation, and I like her username too actually, Chemical Alia. Reminds me of good old Comical Ali. Also, the original name for this weapon was actually just Nami, which is Japanese for wave. Anyway, the texture is applied in different ways to the skin. You can see some of the variations here. Based on a perusing of Reddit, I think people prefer the gun with lots of waves rather than less, but it's a pretty common skin and there's no explicit market for different patterns, so you should be able to get pretty much whatever finish you want at market price. So the next skin is the Glock Reactor, suggested by Hush Dragons. Thanks for that, bud. Top-notch suggestion. Now, this skin is kind of a dull Glock from the HBO Chernobyl collection. It looks pretty unremarkable. Its texture file is just a heap of nuclear hazard symbols, which isn't exactly what I'd call original or particularly interesting, but what is interesting is what can happen when it's slapped on the gun, because if it falls on the right spot, you can get something that looks like this, which is known as a teeth pattern. A pretty gnarly set of teeth, let's be honest. It's clearly been affected by some of that radiation, but they do really look like teeth. Here's another variation of it, and wouldn't you know it, I managed to pick up one of these at market price, and I like it, to be honest. I think I'll keep this one and find some stickers for it. So skin number 4 is the Neon Kimono, and to me, this skin has always been the unloved fourth child of that collection. Now, like the other kimono skins out there, it uses this texture file, but unlike the P250s, this skin only applies that texture to the top of the gun. The rest of it stays this beige colour, which means, essentially, you can get patterns that are all one colour. Now, when it's slapped on the skin, the red parts of the texture turn out white, and the black parts turn out green. But there is a bit of a catch. You see, the texture appears to be broken up into a couple of sections. You can see a good example of it here. You can see a sharp change in the colour of the skin where the texture is broken up, and this makes it a bit harder to find a skin that's got the finish all in one colour. So most skins will be a sort of mixed thing like this, but if you do manage to get one that's all in one colour, the white ones will look like this, and the green ones will look like this. And it might not be easy being green, but personally, I think I prefer it that way. So our second last skin is going to be the Mach 10 Last Dive, and this skin is a lot more interesting than you'd expect. At a distance, it kind of looks like some random smudges, but up close, there's actually a fair bit of detail. You might notice a seahorse sticking out here, for example, and if we look at the texture file, there's lots of shit going on here. Lots and lots and lots of little things like the diving suit, the shell on the skull with the serpent coming out, the tree, the plant textures, is actually really detailed and really interesting. And the best patterns, at least in my view, seem pretty rare. I actually had trouble finding them. The artist's favourites seem to be this one with the skull and this one with the seahorse. I couldn't find the one with the skull, but I did find this one with the seahorse, which is quite a nice pattern, at least in my opinion. So yeah, I think it's easy to miss this skin, but if you pay attention to the detail, it's actually quite nice. Anyway, our final skin is the P250 Nevermore, and just like the last dive, it kind of looks like a bunch of smudges from a distance, but up close, well, you're probably noticing the fact that it's covered in birds right now, and specifically, these birds are ravens. In fact, that, combined with the name of the skin, Nevermore, appears to make the entire thing a giant reference to Edgar Allan Poe's poem The Raven. Now, this skin is fairly cheap and common, it's only a restricted skin from the Danger Zone case, but finding a complete looking bird can still be pretty difficult. Those types of patterns tend to be fairly rare. Most of the time it'll be pretty broken up, but so long as you're patient, you should still be able to find them and get your hands on them for market price, like this one here, which I guess is good news for Edgar Allan Poe fans everywhere. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this video. Before I go, I just want to mention earnerskin.com. This is a site where you can earn credits that you can cash out by watching ads and completing surveys. There's a ton of ways to potentially cash out. You can cash out through crypto, through PayPal, through Steam, all sorts of stuff. Logging in is all handled through Google, so you don't even need to specifically make an account, and if you're looking to get a small cash injection into your Steam account to start building up an inventory from, well, this could be a great way to do it. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment, subscribe. Otherwise, trust the numbers, not your guts. I'm Heyzeus. Thanks for watching. See ya.